Hey, so getting locked inside our homes is still a possibility, and amongst all poor things, one small thing is that we may not have access to our favorite cafe, or for that matter, an espresso machine. So today what we're going to do is figure out how to make an espresso without a machine. Now, to be completely fair and honest, it's not going to be your best cup of espresso, but it's still going to be a cheap replica, and in case you plan to mix it with something to make another cup of coffee, it may just do the trick. So before we get into how to make an espresso, let's look at what exactly is an espresso. An espresso is basically a very potent shot of coffee which is made by passing high pressure steam through a really tightly packed puck of coffee, and the result is this really potent and small shot, and if you do it right, you're also going to get something called a crema on the top. One more thing which is basically very fundamental is that an espresso doesn't have an X in it. So today we're going to look at two ways to make one. The first is using a French press, and the other is using the very famous mocha pot. So the first method we're going to use is using a French press. Now, to be honest, if you want to make an espresso out of a French press, you have to be really desperate, because the whole philosophy of making a French press is completely opposite of the whole philosophy of making an espresso. But it can still be done via a method called double extraction, which is basically extracting the coffee twice to make it stronger. So what you'll need for this recipe is a French press, some hot water, and ground coffee. Now the grind that we'll use for this is slightly coarser than what you'll have for an espresso, because you don't want it to be seeping through the French press. The one that we have for our medium grind packet works perfect for this. So what we'll do is add in about 4 teaspoons of our grind coffee. Now a teaspoon is usually 4.2 grams, so 4 teaspoons roughly translates to about 18 grams of coffee. What we add is about 100 ml of water in this, which has to be hot boiling water, and we wait for about 2 minutes. So 2 minutes is now over, and what you do is you get your cup of coffee out. So what we're going to do next is we're going to brew another shot of coffee, but instead of using hot water, we're going to use the extraction that we got from our last coffee. We again wait 2 minutes, and then we have our shot of espresso. So now that 2 minutes are over, let's get a shot of espresso. So there you have it, an espresso from a French press. So the next way we're going to look at of making an espresso is using the very common and popular mocha pot. Now the mocha pot is also called a stovetop espresso machine, and it's easy to see why. It's possibly one of the most common methods of brewing, especially if you're doing it at home. Now don't expect your espresso to match what you would get in a cafe using an espresso machine, but again, it's gonna be a very nice and cheap replica. So what you'll need for this is again a mocha pot, some hot water, and ground coffee. Now what we're gonna do for this is again put in 18 grams of coffee, or in common layman's term, 4 teaspoons. Now a common malpractice while brewing from a mocha pot is usually people put in cold water, but what you do in that is you overbrew the coffee that's already there, because the heat that basically boils the water is also burning your coffee. So always put warm water a little below the valve, 18 grams of coffee, close it up. So we have a stovetop right here, and what we're just going to do is turn it on and put the coffee on it. Rexu, sit. रुको मैं आपको लाता हूँ. ये देखो क्या है, ये देखो क्या है. Sit. So what you need to do is, you know that first whiskering sound that you get from the mocha pot? Is you stop it right there and put it directly under cold water. So now that our coffee is ready, we're just going to take out our shot of espresso. Another thing you'll notice is, again, this method won't give you the best crema or probably nothing at all, but in terms of taste, it's going to be pretty close to what you would have got in your espresso. So there you have it, an espresso from two different methods to brew at home when you don't have a machine. So now go try these recipes at home and tell us how they came out in the comments below. So the coffee that I'll recommend for this method or an espresso is the 900cc. Now again, if you want to make it using these methods, the medium grind is going to be perfect. But in case you have an espresso machine, I'd recommend to take the beans and put it to an espresso grind.